Welcome back to another episode of Hudson's Highlights. What we do on my channels, we discuss movies and TV shows and things within that space. As promised, it's a little late, but I'm going to get this video started here. We're going to go over the movie on HBO Max, or now called Max, Elevation, starring Anthony Mackie. What is her name? This will be a full spoiler discussion. Movie's been on Max for a while. I've been talking about covering it for a while, so I'm just assuming that everyone has at least tried to check it out. If you haven't, of course, you can always check out of this episode, go ahead and favorite it, and then come back and watch this episode of Hudson's Highlights after you finish the movie. So, as I mentioned, this movie is starring Anthony Mackie and Marina Baccarin. Really good movie for what it is. I'm going to be honest, it is, and it feels like a straight to streaming movie. There's a few plot holes. The CGI isn't fantastic, but again, you get what you get. And with it being a Max HBO production, it is, or at least streaming on Max. I think it's actually a Vertigo production, but it's not bad. It's not bad. So the movie starts out, and I'm going to just give the premise here. So essentially, the world has fallen under. There are these creatures that have surfaced. In the quick recap they give you in the intro, and this intro is all audio. It's basically radio transmissions of what was going on basically during the initial downfall of humanity, if you may say so. And it's just giving you a quick recap of, these things popped up. They were doing this dig, and then they showed up out of nowhere. And if you were anywhere below 8,000 feet, you were pretty much dead. And they figured out, and this is all in the audio recap, that for whatever reason, and they don't know why, but these things won't travel beyond the 8,000 foot of elevation, hence the name of the movie, Elevation. The movie cuts to a scene almost immediately of a young boy who has traveled beneath that 8,000 foot mark. And he has some binoculars and he's looking over this ridge at this building. We really don't know why at the time, but almost immediately he hears a sound, and one of these creatures that will become named, we'll find out in the movie, they named them the Reapers, is after this boy. And he makes it to this 8,000 foot of elevation line that they have marked out with white chalk or paint. It doesn't really describe what it is, but it's clearly defined in the movie. There is a white line in the sand, so to speak. That lets you know that at this point you're safe, and at this point you are not. The creature does do a hard stop at 8,000 feet, which is strange biologically because most things don't do that. There's usually a ebb and flow of, a parameter. Like if you have a hard time breathing at a certain elevation, it won't be exactly 8,000 feet. You may start having breathing problems down at 7,100 feet, and then may progressively get worse up to 8,200 feet. It's odd that was a hard stop. Thought that was strange in the movie. We find out later on why, but that was one of the big puzzling questions in the movie, is why did that thing just completely hit the brakes at 8,000 feet? We find out a few moments later that the little boy that we see is, in fact, Anthony Mackie's character's son. Anthony Mackie's character is called Will in this movie. And the place that he was overlooking with the binoculars is a location called Red Rock. And the reason why that was important to the little boy to risk his life, not only because he wanted to see if other people were there, but that is the last place that he saw his mother alive. So there is a little bit of hope you may say that he's thinking that if he can, maybe one day he'll look over the ridge and he'll see his mother there. Uh, the movie really picks up from that point. They get to the point. They really do. I appreciate that in a movie that's made the way this is made. They don't spend a lot of time trying to give you 15 months because they do explain that it's been 3 years since the downfall of civilization, so to speak. So they don't bore you with, an hour of what happened per character within that 3 year span. They really skip straight to it. This is where we are. This is how we got here. This is our refuge. And we try our best not to travel that way because that way means death. Like that, really appreciate that pace of it because a lot of movies, especially when they're low budget as this is, and you can feel it, it's a low budget movie. The graphics aren't fantastic. It's not terrible, but it's not fantastic. You wouldn't, if you were to see this on the big screen, you'd probably be let down because you would look at the graphics and go, where'd the budget go for this movie? So, but for what, like I mentioned, for what it's worth, for what it is, a straight to streaming movie, the graphics were okay. My wife even said the movie's entertaining. We sat there and had a good time watching it. But the basic premise is this: the little boy has a breathing problem, and he needs these oxygen. He needs a breathing machine treatment whenever he experiences these moments of lung spasm. He was born prematurely, lungs underdeveloped, and he's about 8 years old at this point, but he still has this issue where periodically he has lung spasms and he needs this treatment, breathing treatment, to keep him able to breathe. And Anthony Mackie, you figure out as you're watching a movie, as time kind of progresses. Like I mentioned, it's pretty quick, so they don't beat around the bush here. Pretty quick, you figure out that he's running out of these tanks that are required for the treatment, and the closest place to get the treatment tanks are all the way in Boulder, which is quite a journey away, and beneath the 8,000 elevation mark safety net. Uh, he does get a team together. One of the characters that he recruits, the first character he recruits in the mission, is Nina. And the reason why Nina is important, one, she's a physicist, and she has been involved with Will before. The reason why, and you find this out in this kind of portion of the movie, the reason why Nina and Will are at odds is because Nina is the reason why his wife is dead, essentially. She convinced a few of the parties of the refugee camp, to take this mission to her old lab to try to test the theory, test the hypothesis that she thinks that these Reapers, can be killed. Because as far as anything has been concerned, the reason why they were so unsuccessful in fighting these things back is normal bullets don't work on them. They bounce right off. Grenades don't work on them. Nothing. They're basically impenetrable. And she has this theory, and she talks a group of people from the refugee camp into accompanying her on this mission to create these bullets. Well, they never make it. And one of the people who don't survive is Will's wife. Obviously, Nina makes it back. She's the only survivor. So when Will sets out to retrieve these tanks for his son's breathing treatment, he recruits her. She reluctantly accepts, kind of like a debt to him. You killed my wife. We got my wife killed. You owe me this. He does have a friend. Will has a friend there, Katie. Katie was not initially going to be on the trip, but she volunteered herself. She felt like he needed someone to watch his back, especially with Nina and her history with people traveling beneath the line. She felt like he needed the extra protection. So they all set out on this basically on the premise of a rescue mission behind enemy lines. They're going to Boulder. They're going to get to this hospital, and their plan is, because most hospitals stockpile these O2 tanks, they're going to get there, get these tanks, get back safely so they can save Will's son. And obviously, like any Behind Enemy Lines movie, things don't go as planned. They Will's plan is to take them through this old abandoned mine, and he tells them that they will, for the most part, remain above 8,000 feet. You find out shortly after the journey begins that he may have fabricated how safe this trip was going to be. They get in the mine. He did admit that they were going to have to walk like 170 yards beneath the 8,000-foot threshold. But then when they get to the point where they need to travel through the mine, it's sealed off. There's been a previous collapse in the mine. They have to travel down 7 flights lower, which will make them have to travel about 1,000 yards below the 8,000-foot threshold. And things go pretty wrong pretty quick. These things, as I mentioned, they were initially found underground, so they have night vision, and we don't. They can detect you through CO2. So obviously, if you're breathing out like a mosquito, they can hold in on you. And pretty quickly, one of these things finds them. They try to get away. They have to run to this little shaft, and the shaft pretty much death traps them. There's a small exit, but unfortunately, the exit leads right back to where they came from, and Katie gets killed. And this is where Nina and Will kind of decide that it's in their best interest to let bygones be bygones. You know, like at this point, if we're going to survive, we're going to have to work together. And they make it to the hospital together. They have a few issues finding the CO2, but they do eventually find it. But because they drove a truck to the hospital, naturally one of these things was on their tail. It follows them into the hospital, gets to the hospital. Will makes a pretty savvy move. He shoots some oxygen tanks, knocks this thing out of the window, and crazily enough, knocks one of those things out. But of course, he didn't kill it. Nina decides to tell him, "Hey, listen, we're so close to my lab. At this point, we should go to the lab. I mean, because we're not going to make it back if we don't have anything to fight these things with." And Will reluctantly accepts. They get to the lab. We find out a little bit more about Nina's backstory, but it's neither really here nor there. What really happens in the lab is you find out that even if she had made it to this lab with the original group of people, they would not have been successful because her first attempt, what she thought were her hypothesis, her theory, when she tested it on scales as she had in the lab there, it didn't work. So she tells Will, "Hey, listen, you got what you came for. You need to get back and try to be with your son, save your son, spend time with him. I want to sit here. I want to fix this. I'm going to stay here and either find a way for us to fight back or I'm going to die here in this lab. You shouldn't have to die with me." Pretty touching moment, especially from somebody who kind of seems heartless up to this point. And so Will reluctantly accepts, he does have to save his son. He gets in the truck, he takes off. Unfortunately, the tire blows, flips the truck. He gets knocked out, and when he wakes up, one of these things is on his tail. He takes off, he grabs the bag, grabs his gun, he takes off up the hill, but naturally he's running uphill. This thing is on him. He gets to the top of the mountain, and not only is one of the things on his tail, there's one at the line waiting for him to make it to the top. So these things are smart. And there's not just one or two of them, there's 3 or 4 of them. He's surrounded, and you think, well, he's going to die here. And then ultimately, Nina shows up, fires her M16 or AR-15, and shoots one of the things, and they explode. So clearly, she's figured out one of her. You see that she kind of has an idea in the lab, but you don't see if she's successful. But she saves the day, and they get back to town after a few things happen. They raise this flag that she had they all agreed upon this pirate flag that if they ever figured out a way to kill him, they would spread the news. And that's pretty much the movie. They figure out a way to fight back. You do figure out that once she kills a few of them, one, they explode, and you're able to determine that these things are not biological; they're actually mechanical, which means that something made them. And uh, so, they, of course, they let everybody know. They start making these bullets. They start fighting back. They're able to finally leave the 8,000 foot threshold without immediate danger because they have weapons now. They can fight these things off, these mechanical beings off, the Reapers. And the movie really ends there. It kind of shows you a map of like it kind of expands in green as they're taking back the American territory. And then the movie stops, the movie ends, and then I didn't even know this was going to happen, but there is a post credit scene, which, shout out to Marvel for making this popular. The post credit scene, you see that in fact these things are from space because you see 3 spacecraft flying in to Earth. So we know that these things were not man made, these things were made extraterrestrially. And obviously, they've started to realize that their machines are being disabled and they're coming to figure out what's going on, and maybe even fight back the humans. Pretty good movie, man. I mean, for what it was, wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. If you haven't gave it a shot, it's definitely a good little hour and a half, maybe hour and 45, hour and 32 minute movie. Got this right here on online. Hour and 32 minutes exact. Good little movie is rocking a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes. So about a little over half people who watched it liked it, and that's good. For what it is, a straight to streaming movie, low budget movie. They paid a lot of money, obviously, to get Anthony Mackie and Marina Baccarin on this movie. So if you haven't given it a shot and you have an hour and a half to kill and you want to see something that's pretty decent, this is on Max. I recommend you give it a shot. It is definitely worth watching. Um, we are going to do, hopefully, either way, I'm going to do a open spoiler discussion of season 1, episode 2 of The Last of Us tomorrow. Hopefully, I'm able to have my wife on board with me in this one. So that should drop on my channel tomorrow night around 9. So be on the lookout for that. If you haven't started your recap yet, this will give you an opportunity to go ahead and watch episode 1 and episode 2. Check out my first video on The Last of Us episode 1 that I dropped on Monday, and we'll be caught up together for episode 2. But thank you all for watching so far in this episode of Hudson's Highlights. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you, and take care.